need an excuse to read only horror books in 1 month, but I sure won't turn one down. It's October and it's time to get spooky. Let's check it out. Hi there! I'm Michelle with the Goffstown Public Library, where I'm an adult services librarian. Welcome and welcome back to our library. As always, I'm delighted to have you here. It is truly my pleasure to share 8 horror books at the top of my TBR list. A whole stack of 25 horror movies, not enough for me to watch this month. I need some books too. Of course, I do read horror books all year round, but there's something just a little special about reading them in October. The chills cut a little deeper and the thrills hit a little harder. Plus, October is a time where people who don't normally read horror books become interested in the genre. So whatever your reason for wanting to read horror books today, I hope you find 1 or 2 in this video that are good enough for your reading list. In no particular order, here are 8 horror books I'm excited to read this month. First up, Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. Now a well-received TV show on HBO, Lovecraft Country is a genre-bending odyssey told in linked stories that explore the Jim Crow era and its legacy. The main thrust of the book is the story of Atticus Turner, who sets out to visit his father in the north, but is unwillingly pulled in to the plot of a mysterious organization rooted in white supremacy and sorcery. That particular face-off is pregnant with thrills and social criticism, as are the other stories that feature one member of the Turner family facing off against Lovecraftian horror beats like dark magic, haunted houses, and mysterious covens. Everyday horrors of racism and human cruelty are balanced nicely with the cosmic horrors of Lovecraftian lore. What's compelling about this book is that Ruff does such a superb job highlighting racism as a horror even greater than any Lovecraftian imagining. Maybe you've heard me talk about this on this channel before, but I'll say it again. H.P. Lovecraft was a vocal bigot, and his legacy in the horror genre is fraught. I love any book that'll take that legacy to task. I'm highly anticipating this book and expecting it to be an easy 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I've got The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I love how the publisher of this book has described Stephen Graham Jones as the Jordan Peele of horror literature. That's pretty big praise considering how influential Peele's Get Out and Us has been in horror movies. This is a revenge saga where 4 American Indian men struggle for their lives after a horrific childhood incident awakes a vengeance that will pursue them to the death. This is an own voices novel that draws its horror from modern Native American culture, both inside and outside of the reservation, highlighting the dangers of turning your back on your culture and tradition. It's also another horror novel that delivers chilling frights as well as social criticism, something that I'm definitely here for. Horror often gets this stereotype of being campy and unacademic, but it's books like The Only Good Indians that turn that stereotype on its head while including voices not given enough airtime in this genre. If you prefer young adult books, Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power is a promising read. Margot Nielsen doesn't know her family. Well, she knows her mother, but no one else, and is forbidden by her mother's many rules from asking about them. A chance discovery leads Margot to a maternal grandmother she never knew existed, but also to a disturbing and menacing atmosphere that Margot is determined to get to the bottom of. The publisher's blurb includes a mention of genetically mutated corn that grows in double helix cobs with pink flesh. What an unusual detail. I'm also excited for the anxiety-laden narration told in first person, which is sure to lend an immediacy to the horror. But really we're dancing around psychological suspense here more than outright horror. This book examines the curdled relationships between generations of mothers and daughters. I get the feeling that this book will cover the same emotional stomping grounds as the film Hereditary. Sure, the horror elements are going to be different. However, both this book and the film blur the lines between generational abuse and supernatural horror. We've also got a creepy grandmother here, so this might be good if you enjoyed the film The Visit. Lots of promising stuff happening in Burn Our Bodies Down. Another YA book that I've got on my dance card is Horrid by Katrina, Leno. This book brings all the creepy autumn ambience in spades. And it's got one of my favorite tropes, moving into a haunted house. Jane and her mother have just moved from California to Maine's North Manor, where something isn't quite right. Nicknamed the Creep House by locals, North Manor has been shuttered for years, and maybe for good reason. Roses bloom out of season, shadows spill out behind closed doors, and pianos play by themselves. Leno pours her writing skills into this unsettling atmosphere, with less emphasis on character development as, for example, Burn Our Bodies Down. Not only do readers see Jane struggle with the house's supernatural quirks, but she's also dealing with anxiety, grief, and anger-induced blackouts. So this book is just as much about conquering the mysteries outside of us as within. There are elements of both Stephen King and Agatha Christie here, but the easy comparison is to The Haunting at Hill House. Both are spooky and emotional. Leno's fans have absolutely adored this book, and even though I haven't read her before, I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth in. Sticking with that haunted house theme, I'm also excited to read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I really enjoyed Sager's Final Girls, which I talked about in my video about twist endings. In that same video, I teased Home Before Dark as Sager's newest novel making waves in the genre. He's garnered a reputation for subverting tropes, and here he tackles haunted houses a la Amityville Horror. Maggie Holt is haunted, not by the undead, but by her father's legacy. In her youth, her family lived in Bainbury Hall in a remote Vermont woods for all of about 3 weeks before they fled in the dark of night. It was a situation that Maggie's father recounted in his tell-all memoir, House of Horrors. Since then, Maggie has been unable to step out of the book's shadows, a book that she believes is an outright lie. Now an adult and a restorer of old homes, Maggie has inherited Bainbury Hall after her father's death. She travels to the supposed haunt to flip it and sell quickly, but is accosted by legends, locals, and the dark history the house may hold. In this story, you have a skeptic unable to believe in the supernatural things happening. Her narration leads readers to wonder, is there something earthbound, if not any less dangerous, stalking this house? I've known Sager to have great control over the tension in his books, often casting doubt on the narrator's point of view, which serves to undermine the reader's expectations. I'm banking on the assumption that Home Before Dark will deliver that same delicious effect. Next, I'm looking forward to Josh Malerman's Bird Box sequel, Malorie. Bird Box, the book that inspired the record-smashing Netflix film starring Sandra Bullock, is a fantastic horror book in its own right, which I highly recommend you read. As a recap, mysterious creatures have arrived on Earth. Just the sight of one is enough to drive a person to kill themselves, often horrifically. In a chilling twist, some people who see the creatures aren't driven to suicide, but instead to homicide. What Bird Box succeeds at is building a world of survivors. A world where only a blindfold protects you from imminent death, a world where we must band together but can trust no one, and a world where Malorie is raising 2 children. So Bird Box is the beginning, and now we have an ending. To be frank, I didn't think Bird Box needed a sequel. I was happy to let sleeping dogs lie. But the way people have been talking about this book, it seems like Malorie answers questions that I have. Questions like, how do the creatures adapt? How will survivors know when or if it's safe to take off the blindfolds for good? What are the consequences of living in perpetual fear? And how will the next generation adapt to these challenges? To be even more honest, these are questions that I've tried hard not to think about our pandemic-riddled world. In a situation where there actually is an unseeable threat causing mass casualties, Bird Box is just hitting a little closer to home. As all good horror stories do, this sequel takes my real-world anxieties and begins to play with them. I'm glad Malerman wrote this book, so I can find some of the answers to my questions. I've heard that even though the world of Bird Box and Malorie is dark and apocalyptic and largely pessimistic, there is cautious optimism at the end, and I really want that optimism. Sawkill Girls is a YA creature feature that pits a Losers Club-esque group of girls against a menacing threat that disappears teen girls from their island home of Sawkill Rock. Much of the book's strength comes from the character studies of the lovelorn newcomer, the grief-stricken pariah, and the privileged liar colliding in unique ways. Those strong female leads also set the stage for exploring the dangers of growing up feminine in a hostile world. Legrand's lush writing captures the foreboding nature of the island. It isn't long before the truth behind the disappearances surfaces, and the teens must take a side in the battle between good and evil. Is anyone else sensing the inevitable comparisons to Stephen King's It? Well, I'm coming here for the bone-chilling thrills, but staying for the coming-of-age lesbian romance with a feminist bent. Really looking forward to that one. And speaking of badass ladies, I am anxiously waiting to read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Mexican Gothic finds our protagonist Noemi arriving at High Place, an isolated mansion where her newlywed cousin is sending increasingly desperate letters about her new husband. Noemi is a unique character for this setting. She's much more at home in the world of flashy balls and makeup than amateur sleuthing. But she's strong-willed and is intent on learning the secrets of her cousin's new family and the house itself. I love how the publisher describes this as a terrifying yet seductive world, because that's exactly how I feel about the description for this book. Gothic fiction is known for a crumbling elegance, the horror behind the facade, and for atmosphere dripping off every page. I'm really excited to see how that'll play out in a Mexican cultural setting, and I've heard nothing but rave reviews for this title. I'm really expecting a slow burn of a book where all the secrets are rapidly disclosed at the end, a la Hitchcock's Psycho. Plus, this cover, sign me up. And there you have it, 8 horror books that are topping my TBR list in October. What are you reading this month? Let me know in those comments. I always love your recommendations, and I'm gonna need them because I think I'm gonna tear through these 8 pretty quickly. As always, any book I mentioned today is listed in the description below, as well as information about getting started with the Goffstown Public Library's downloadable content. Instead of buying your ebooks and your e-audiobooks, you can get them for free using your library card. Like and share this video if you got something out of it. We really appreciate it. It helps YouTube show our videos to other viewers. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got book talks for teens and adults, how-tos, crafts, and more on this channel. I'll be back here next week for another episode of Book Talk with Michelle. In the meantime, you can connect with the Goffstown Public Library on social media, or you can visit goffstownlibrary.com to see what's in the catalog yourself. Again, I'm Michelle with the Goffstown Public Library, and I'll check you out later. Bye!